Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. In today's show, we discuss the big news from Canada with Trudeau's resignation and its potential impact on the Sikh community. We also take a look at the political row brewing over the funeral of Sikh former Prime Minister Manmoan Singh. And as most organisations deliver their New Year's message, Gurpatwant Singh Panoon wouldn't be left out, of course, as he raises a Sikh call to arms. Yes, a genuine call to arms as he once again takes on India in his fight for Khalistan. And from politics to entertainment, or maybe we're actually staying with politics after all, as Narendra Modi enjoys the sycophantic overtures of Sikh musician and actor Diljit Dosanjh. And if this isn't enough to make you cringe, then the comments in its wake certainly will. All this and more in today's show. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers. I'm going to start the show here with just addressing a quick comment. It was in relation to a sound issue that we seem to have where we lost a bit of sound. Our apologies for that. We are working on having that corrected, and no, it's not little gremlins in the internet sphere somewhere. It's just a technical issue that we're resolving. Thank you.
Indeed, so apologies for that. And James and I together, yes indeed, we will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at lots of your great comments which have been filling up below the videos, so thank you as always for those. Right James, let's get things underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Angus, it seems like there's a bit of controversy once again with the Modi government disrespecting Sikhs, but this time it is the disrespect that they have shown to Dr. Manmoan Singh, who was the 13th Prime Minister of India. Now, what's happening is that generally they would find a burial site that is fitting for someone of his stature, given his legacy and his contributions to the India people and the country as a whole. It is really upsetting to a lot that he was not given a proper burial and remembrance. Instead, he was basically they did a cremation, and they went ahead and did the ceremonies there, which is not really a place that people can go and pay their homage, to pay their respects to someone who gave so much to the India people. Now, going back, I mean, we can look at the history of India, and all prime ministers who have passed previously have been given proper respectful burials. And when I say that, I'm talking about their ceremonies and their memorial services, and then somewhere that is etched in history so that people can pay their respects and go and visit that site. So again, it's something that the Modi government is saying they are correcting. They do have consultants to work on finding a final resting place and basically a place that can accommodate that. So the fact that they had not done this previous to the ceremony was what was really upsetting to a lot of people, and they felt it very disrespectful. And Rahul Gandhi came forward and said that the great son of Mother India was insulted, and he led the voice against Modi and the government, saying that it was just completely an insult, as I said, and there was no place for that type of disrespect. And we don't know if it has to do with him being Sikh. We don't know if it is because he accomplished such great things in the history of India, and there's a lot of legacy there that still spills over and benefits the poor and the middle class of India. So there's a lot of reasons why that may be the case, but we just don't know for sure. But what we do know is that, it's always tough to go back and replay it, in the simple fact that what's done is done. And now, the disrespect and the total disregard for his legacy has been very clearly made publicly by the government. So when we look at Dr. Singh, he was, as I said, the 13th Prime Minister, and he was originally from a section of Punjab that is actually now part of India since the partition of 1947. And with that, he grew up in a family where he went off to the University of Oxford when he got older, and then he went to work for the United Nations. During that time of his service in the United Nations from 1966 to 1969, he of course began his bureaucratic career with the fact that he worked with a lot of international delegates and a lot of international world leaders, and really learned how to use the international community to benefit the Indian people, and to use diplomacy as opposed to isolation in the advancement for the India government. Now, Dr. Singh had come into government politics in the role of an advisor for finance and commerce, and then grew his position further as he was brought in and eventually to the Minister of Finance role. He did some controversial actions to help with the India economy and to get control of the India rupee by dropping it approximately 19%, first at 9% and then it went down to 19%. And they dropped that in order to balance out the actual dollar, the rupee versus dollar and the international currencies, and really to balance out and try to bring some credibility to the Reserve Bank. So, of course, he was very successful in that. Upon becoming prime minister, he was very instrumental in many different activities, including nuclear arrangements that was allowing India to go into the nuclear power end and to be able to utilize uranium and other things that were controlled on the international markets. And although that almost collapsed his government at the time, it really did bring a lot of prosperity and independence to India in that regard. He also worked on increasing international trade. He had a very respected relationship with many world leaders, including U.S. leader George Bush, and they worked together to really bring along the economy and the GDP of India, which saw, I believe it was about an average of 8.7% increase in GDP and international trade year over year while he was the prime minister. With that said, he spent 10 years of his life as the prime minister, one of the longest, I believe, within the top four in terms of the longest serving prime ministers. And he really, as I said, cared a lot about the people. And it wasn't about faith. It wasn't about position. It wasn't about level on a caste system. It was about human beings. And that was really what drove him, was to be servicing the people in which he represented and the country which he held so dear, and wanted to move forward in the international community to take it from a developing nation to a middle-range developing nation. And now we see that they are wanting within the next decade or two to be fully recognized and fully developed. So there's a lot to be said for his accomplishments and what he has done throughout his life and the legacy that he's going to leave behind. And I'm going to leave you with one last image on this story, Angus, which I thought was very impressive. There is an artist in Punjab who actually did a sculpture, and it was just phenomenal. I'm just going to show you that because I just felt that the statue was so beautifully done that it's quite impressive. And you can see it there. The artist was Iqbal Gill, and this is just outside of one of the museums there. And people are calling for that to be actually moved to somewhere that people can actually really share that for generations to come, and to be a monument to the doctor and all of his accomplishments, Angus.
Yeah, impressive stuff. Yes, I think this whole story, it is actually created quite a political furore, as they say, essentially because this guy has achieved an enormous amount during his tenure as Prime Minister, and the treatment for his funeral process and protocol has actually been disappointing, I think, as a euphemism. But certainly there are those in the Congress Party particularly who are up in arms saying this is appalling. His legacy was enormous for India, and his funeral and his laying to rest should respect that legacy and pay tribute accordingly to that legacy. And so the big question is, what message does this send? This is sending a very disappointing, again, a euphemism, a very disappointing message to the people of India and indeed to the people of the world. They're saying this is the respect that we show to one of our greatest prime ministers. Is it because he was a Sikh? That really is the big question. That's really what I suppose a lot of this whirl of controversy is focusing and spiralling around. Is it because he was a Sikh that Narendra Modi's government are not paying due respect to his legacy and his memory? Who knows? We don't know, but it does send a message, and it sits alongside so many other messages, let's call them, from every possible angle. This denigrating, this insult to the whole Sikh community at all levels, whether it's entertainment, whether it's politics, whether it's economics, whatever it is. At any situation where a Sikh raises above the average, certainly they are treated with I would suggest, a lesser respect than anybody else from any other, or particularly from the Hindu community. And it would appear even one of the greatest prime ministers of India since 1947 is likewise treated with similar disrespect, which again sends a very important message about what the BJP and the ruling class of India really feel about the Sikh community. But when we look at Manmoan Singh, what did he achieve in his tenure? He was extraordinarily successful. Weirdly, he actually almost came to power accidentally, because it was, as a member of the Congress Party, it was Sonia Gandhi, yes, that Gandhi dynasty that has controlled the Congress Party in Indian politics for so many generations. It was Sonia Gandhi who was expected to become Prime Minister after, I think it was Vajpayee was lost power. But in fact, because Sonia Gandhi wasn't actually born in India, I believe she was born in Europe, Italy, I think, off memory, she decided not to stand. And in fact, then it fell to Manmoan Singh, who sort of was just in the right place at the right time. Yeah. But then critics did say afterwards that he became a tool, almost a puppet of the Gandhi family. But he quickly paid that little lip service and actually set himself up as his own man. He instituted an awful lot of very positive things for India. He took India basically from what was at the time a relatively third world country up into one of the fastest rising growing powers on the global stage. He really set the foundations for what Narendra Modi is enjoying himself now and the BJP are enjoying. It was Manmoan Singh's foundations that really built India to what it is today, whether it was economics, devaluing the rupee, as you've talked about, James, or whether it was actually inviting greater foreign and direct investment into India that, again, likewise built those economic foundations. He liberalised the Indian economy. He allowed it to install the right structures and framework to grow into an economic superpower, again, the fruits of which it is enjoying today. And likewise, as I said yesterday, he did so much for the poor, for the underclasses of India, those lower castes of India. He brought in so many policies and reforms that benefited the lower castes of India that, again, likewise still endure today and has helped lift much of India's population out of those poverty levels. And indeed, and I think what is particularly relevant also to a lot of what we talk about, he was the first Prime Minister to publicly apologise to the Sikh community in 2005 for the events of 1984. Yes, this is a member of Congress, the Congress Party that was in power at the time. Indira Gandhi was that Prime Minister who instituted Operation Blue Star, who was potentially going to take things to an even higher level. With even worse events later on in that year, which then led to her ultimate assassination. But it was Prime Minister Manmoan Singh who apologised on behalf of India, on behalf of the Congress Party, to the Sikh community for the events of 1984. So he acknowledged the genocide, he acknowledged that dreadful Operation Blue Star. So this is an interesting link then, because it's Rahul Gandhi now at the moment who is standing in opposition to Narendra Modi. It's Rahul Gandhi who's creating this political controversy, saying, look, we are not paying Manmoan Singh enough tributes to his legacy. Why are we not paying enough tribute to Manmoan Singh? And again, it was Manmoan Singh who apologised on behalf of the Congress Party in India. So my question then really comes back to Rahul Gandhi. Why not follow in Manmoan Singh's footsteps, and why not follow his legacy? And it would actually pay tribute to Manmoan Singh if Rahul Gandhi himself, on behalf of the Gandhi clan, apologised to the Sikh community for 1984 and the Sikh genocides that followed. Why not do that? We've talked about this in the past. It is a huge step for Rahul Gandhi to take. Rahul Gandhi has done his job as leader of the opposition. He stood up to BJP, he stood up to Narendra Modi, he's called out Modi for his attacks on the Sikh community and the outrageous treatment of India's minorities. But it's that extra step. It is that a huge apology. It is that apology that people are crying out for. Why doesn't Rahul Gandhi apologise for Indira Gandhi's actions in 1984? I don't know if he ever will, but if he really does mean anything, if he really does mean his tributes towards Manmoan Singh and what Manmoan Singh achieved on behalf of the Congress Party, why not just take that extra step? Is that too much to ask, James? Maybe. We'll see. I don't think he will, but I've called for it in the past. I think more and more people should call for Rahul Gandhi to take that step. I think it would be a very, very significant symbolic step.
Absolutely. And some of his family members and others got together at the Gurdwara in New Delhi and paid their respects there to give some type of honorary funeral and service and place for the public to gather. So they did try to do that as well. But again, it was still a slap in the face, in my opinion, to someone who was a winner of the World Statesman Award in 2010 and someone that Henry Kissinger was quoted as calling a statesman with vision, persistence, and integrity. And these are things that were definitely lacking in today's politicians that, he definitely set a tone that hopefully we can get back to in politics, Angus. And with that said, let's take a look at some more politics as we talk about credibility and fun and stepping aside with Trudeau. Yes, it is finally, I said yesterday, I was expecting Wednesday for him to actually call it quits. But nope, he made the announcement Monday morning in Ottawa, where he faced the reporters and other media outlets and announced that he is resigning. He is stepping down as not only the leader of the Liberal Party, but of course with that comes stepping aside as the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, our system here is much like yours, Angus, in terms of the parliamentary system, and that is different than how it works in the US. So what that means for Canada at this point is that, of course, we need to go forward with the party to find a new leader. And once they elect a new leader of the Liberal Party, they will be in set to replace Trudeau. He or she will then become Prime Minister as the leader of the Liberal Party. Beyond that, of course, we are already expecting an election here in 2025, so this just guarantees that there will definitely be an election this year, and take it from there. As I spoke of last night, the concern, of course, is, the Poilievre government and his administration having so much sway and so much clout in the polls right now. It's difficult to fathom a Canada moving forward with the Poilievre government at the lead. So we'll have to see who replaces Justin Trudeau at the helm of the Liberal Party. With that said, the front runners seem to be Chrystia Freeland or Mr. Carney, who was the head of the Bank of Canada. Again, either one, I don't know if that's going to be enough to actually sway voters to come back from the Conservative side. And I just don't see the NDP being strong enough at this point to take any type of commanding lead to be able to assist in any type of cooperative government. So let's just take a quick look at Justin Trudeau's announcement this morning as he came out and made an announcement to the media and to the world.
That's why this morning I advised the Governor-General that we need a new session of Parliament. She has granted this request, and the House will now be prorogued until March 24th. Over the holidays, I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. Last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the President of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
All right, so as you can see, he addressed the crowd and he has stated that he's going to resign. And as I said, it's a bit different here in Canada as it is in the US for our US viewers. And that being said, they have to appoint someone or vote on a new leader of the party. By going forward with this and asking the Governor General to suspend Parliament until March, that allows the party to go forward to elect a new leader, but also to stave off any vote of non-confidence, forcing an election before November or such, before the Liberals call the election. So it can't be forced at this point. But again, we need to really look at what the options are, who comes in to replace Trudeau, and how charismatic and credible they can be in trying to sway back that loss of voters and loss of public confidence that has been there. Now, my personal opinion is that I don't think that Trudeau has done anywhere near as bad a job as the certain individuals and certain groups would have you believe online. I also know that there is a lot of interference by the Indian government, among others, in terms of social media, news, and other posts and information or misinformation that's getting out to the public. And unfortunately, there are the members of the public who do not do their research, that don't understand the numbers, that don't understand the politics, and therefore they just keep spewing the same hatred or the same misinformation over and over until more and more people believe it as the truth. And so with that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a job I would want. I don't think that 99.999% of Canadians would want it. And very few out of those that would want it could actually do the job. So again, I appreciate all that he's done for our country, but I do agree that maybe it's time for a change.
Indeed. I suppose I'm slightly ambivalent towards Justin Trudeau. It's sad to see him go in many ways. We've talked a lot about Justin Trudeau, and I've often said I'm no fan of Trudeau, but I've always totally respected his stance over the transnational oppression, and his protection of the Sikh community has been a wonderful advocate and protector for the Sikh community in Canada. What he's done really for the community is really an example to all leaders around, certainly the Western world and Western democracies, how to protect a minority under enormous pressure from a very large overseas giant. Of course, I'm talking about India. He's had the cojones, shall we say, to stand up to Narendra Modi, to even go to the extent of an enormous diplomatic incident, a diplomatic, more than an argument, it is a diplomatic war almost with Canada, with ambassadors withdrawn, etc. So he has had the courage to stand up, even to his own political detriment, to stand up against Narendra Modi. So, as I say, I've certainly laid credit against Justin Trudeau for his stance on that. He's done an awful lot of work for the Sikh community, and I think to see him go is an enormous loss for the community. I think that's very, very sad indeed. So, but I've also been for many years a critic of Justin Trudeau because of many other issues, which I won't go into too much detail here, but certainly during the COVID times, and ironically, he stands in the Liberal Party, it was his illiberal policies when it came to lockdown, the truckers, things like this, freedom of speech. He's had an awful lot of critics saying, look, actually, you're constraining of freedom of speech, of just basic human freedoms during COVID, etc. And certainly from this side of the Atlantic, when we saw it, we were absolutely completely appalled at what we saw from Justin Trudeau. And that really turned me against Justin Trudeau. But that was for very different issues. And I think what's relevant here is we are talking about the Sikh community. So whatever your stance, and certainly whether you supported or disliked or liked Justin Trudeau, I think what is absolutely without argument is the benefits that he brought for the Sikh community. So of course his departure does leave an enormous vacuum and of course an enormous worry for the community. And what does this mean for the community going forward? Well, what happens next? And again, James, you're obviously much more of an expert on Canadian politics than myself, but certainly it does appear we've got this sort of almost limbo period now where Parliament's prorogued till March. We've got a potential election in fall this year. So what's going to happen up to that point? Probably not an awful lot other than we're going to find a new leader, whether that is this Chrystia Freeland, who was actually instrumental in bringing Trudeau down by all accounts. But interestingly, this name Mark Carney pops up, James. And Mark Carney, he's known to us here in the UK. He was actually, after he left Canada, he became the governor of the Bank of England, of all things. Yes, he was responsible for setting some of our most important economic policies here in the UK for several years. And he achieved an enormous amount of criticism. I couldn't stand the guy, frankly, because he actually caused an enormous bubble in the property market here in the UK, which we're still suffering from even now, years after his departure. So he certainly left in his wake an enormous amount of criticism from here in the UK. So I eye him with an enormous amount of suspicion. I see him as a bit of a World Economic Forum puppet. He is part of this sort of banking ruling globalist elite, in my personal opinion, and I think a lot of people share that opinion. So I'm always highly suspicious about his own background, his own agenda in this. So it'll be interesting to see if he does take power. But what really matters, I think, as I say, we're in a limbo period. I think come fall, if indeed the next election is in fall, what happens next? Well, this is the time for big concerns for the Sikh community, because I think, yes, it is likely, according to the polls, that Poilievra's Conservatives are going to sweep into power. What does that mean? Well, again, James, we've often talked about Poilievra and his attachment to the right-wing elements around the world, his certainly attachment to India. How much has India been influencing Conservative politics in Canada? Well, it's been proven, certainly during the recent inquiries, that India has interfered in the Conservative Party. It has interfered in Canadian politics, and certainly there are members of that party who are in place probably because of influence and resources, let's call it. So I've got to choose my words carefully here. Yeah. But certainly India has had a hand somehow in putting people in place in positions of power within the Conservative Party in Canada. And it is their influence going forward that is of great concern to the Sikh community. Now, of course, around the peripheries of all this, we have Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. Now, I understand, doesn't have probably enough public support to sweep him to power in fall. But could we see a position where maybe the Conservatives don't quite get enough seats in the next elections that they might need to lean on Jagmeet Singh? I don't know. Would they make comfortable bedfellows? Are their politics close enough that they could form some sort of coalition alliance? I don't know. Maybe, James, you can answer that. But who knows? But it could well be that maybe Jagmeet Singh may hold the balance of power somehow. Maybe his if he raises enough seats in the next election, maybe he could influence the agenda going forward. All I know, James, is that 2025 could be a very interesting year in Canadian politics, which of course will have in turn an enormous impact on the Sikh community.
Absolutely, Angus, and it's very interesting to look at whether or not they could partner up with the Conservatives, whether that would work. But as you said, the old saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And for Jagmeet and Pierre Poilievre to be bedfellows, I'm just glad that we got free Medicare here in Canada, because Jagmeet's going to need a lot of penicillin for sharing a bed with the Conservatives. But with that said, I mean, even Trump was the first to jump online and start taking credit for Justin Trudeau resigning and back on about us becoming the 51st state, which is going to make other countries jealous because they thought they were going to be his 51st state. I guess you never forget your first 51st, I guess, Angus.
Indeed. It's so very interesting. I think
interesting. And on a closing note on that issue, though, is that there's another name that's been thrown into the hat, and how legitimate it's going to be is one to watch, because that would be Christina Clark, who was Christina Clark. She was the Premier of British Columbia, and she has a very close relation with the Sikh community here. So I think that could be really interesting to watch in terms of beneficial turn of events for the Sikh community and for the country as a whole, I think. But again, most elections are decided in Ontario and Quebec because of the major population differential. So I don't know that they're going to want to pull in Christina Clark from the West. I think they're going to go with somebody from the East.
And I wouldn't be surprised if actually over the coming sort of 8, 9, 10 months that somebody comes in from left field, as you rightly say. I think certainly we've seen this on many occasions in politics across the Western world, is that it's very always, when you assume what's going to happen, doesn't happen. And quite often, in fact, Manmoan Singh is a prime example of this, as we've just been talking about. Somebody can come in from left field and suddenly just be in the right place at the right time. Maybe it could be that Poilievre suddenly becomes too controversial a figure, and suddenly they find a safe pair of hands, I think they often call it. Somebody who comes totally from left field, somebody totally unpredictable, who comes out of the shadows and is seen as a safe pair of hands, and suddenly sweeps to power completely out of the blue. So who knows, James, maybe in Canadian politics, by the end of this year, we may have somebody we haven't even heard of yet sweeping to prime ministership in Canada.
Well, and I do honestly think that Jagmeet's got a chance to win a lot of seats if he handles the process properly and really plays to the public as to what he wants to achieve and what they want to see happen. But keep it realistic and keep it honest. I think that is his huge benefit over the Pierre Poilievre, because nobody really takes a lot of what he says seriously. So.
Yeah, and I think what we have witnessed across the Western world, particularly Europe, the UK, and of course in the US now, is this massive swing to the right. We've had the liberals, the lefts, the socialist sort of liberals taking power and really dominating the agenda for several years. And there's been an enormous backlash, particularly across Europe and now in the US, where this liberal agenda has opened the floodgates to immigration, uncontrolled immigration, and many other sort of similar policies, which has really upset the population. It's caused all sorts of social upheavals. And the backlash to that has been this massive swing to the right. We're seeing it in Germany. We're seeing it in France now. AfD in Germany and France, Le Pen's party. And of course in the US with Trump sweeping to power now. And likewise, this is what swept Trudeau away again and potentially bringing in the Conservatives. Again, it's this backlash and it's bringing in the right wing. Ironically, weirdly, here in the UK, we've gone the other way. We've had this sort of liberal Conservative Party, and now it's gone extreme left with Starmer's party. So actually, the UK is bucking the trend, and again, actually, behind the scenes, there is a strong swing to the right again as part of that backlash. But we are seeing this social swing across the Western world to the right wing. What does that mean for the Sikh community? Well, of course, the immediate, I suppose, knee-jerk reaction is, well, it's bad for the Sikh community because it's right wing. Of course, they're trying to associate with extremism. Actually, no, I don't think that's right. I think the right wing has been deliberately smeared and mislabeled. I think is right of centre, which is very different. And I think, for example, many amongst the Sikh community do support the Trump administration for the right reasons. And I think likewise here in the UK, I suppose the Sikh community tends to sit left of centre. But that's not strictly the case with all Sikh community. Who knows? Anyway, that's a rabbit hole, James. I think we could spend a whole programme going down. Let's not. Let us move on, because we are rushing through the clock as we always do. Let's move on to my first story. And I want to talk about, now, I talked about in the introduction, the 2025. All organisations tend to launch their New Year's resolutions, their New Year's statement. And I have often talked about Govt Singh Panoon and the Sikhs for Justice on this programme. And Govt Singh Panoon is, of course, always eager to send out his messages at every opportunity. And 2025 is no exception. He has launched his 2025 manifesto, his 2025 message to the world, well, particularly to India. And it's quite an interesting one. Let me play you the first half a minute or so of his latest video.
Year 2025 will be the decisive for doomsday of India. Sikhs for Justice is going to launch a bloodless war to kill India politically and diplomatically by targeting India's economies and embassies globally. While pro-Khalistan Sikhs are campaigning for liberation of Punjab from the Indian occupation through Khalistan referendum, pro-Khalistan Sikhs are equally oath-bound and duty-bound.
Etc., etc. And of course he goes on. I'll give you, the sound actually is terrible in this video, and I think Govt really needs to get a new audio editor, because the sound in his videos tends to be very badly balanced. But essentially what he's saying, I'll read you a transcript pretty much of what he said. So he said, while pro-Khalistan Sikhs are campaigning, of course, for Khalistan, pro-Khalistan Sikhs are equally forward-bound and duty-bound to be loyal to America and Canada. And this is a message that he's sending out regularly. And it's very interesting when you look at that video. Of course, that video shows very, very deliberately provocative visuals. It says a bloodless war to kill India. It talks about killing India, 2025, kill India. Again, very deliberately provocative statements. It's implying that we're going to kill India. In reality, of course, he's not going to kill India, but he's using this very provocative, this very emotive language. It's very typical rhetoric of Panoon and the way he works. And what he's saying, he's tempering this. He's sending out this almost duplicitous message. On the one hand, he's saying, we're going to kill India. We're going to kill India. But then he's tempering it with saying, actually, we're going to kill it diplomatically. And he's always, it just brings it back. He just pushes it to the edge. We're going to kill India. And then he brings it back from the edge and say, we're going to kill them diplomatically. And so his message says, and again, the thread that goes through all his messages is that we are duty bound as Sikhs to be loyal to Canada and America, to your host countries. But then he says, and be ready to sacrifice their lives at times of war. So again, he's almost treading this razor's edge where he's saying it's a war with India. We're going to kill India. But then it says, but it's a diplomatic war and we are ready to sacrifice our lives, but we remain loyal to our host countries. And he says, unlike Indo-American and Indo-Canadian Hindus who have proved their loyalties to Modi's violent Hindutva ideology and are working against the interests of US and Canada and their sovereignties, Modi and his allies are defying Trump's MAGA mission. They're aligning with their forces of Russia and Iran, making a triangle of evil against America and Canada. So what he's basically saying is, let's contrast the Sikhs and the Khalistanis in Canada and the US, who are loyal and remain loyal to the interests of Canada and the US, and they will always fight for the interests of Canada and the US. That is what the Sikhs stand for. Contrast that with American and Canadian Hindus, whose loyalty isn't to Canada and to the US, it is still to India and the Hindutva ideology. So he's making a very clear distinction here, where he's saying that the Hindus in the Americas are not looking at the interests of the Americas. They're looking at the interests of Hindutva. That is what he's warning America about. And he's also, once again, drawing up this fact that India obviously isn't fighting in the interests of the Americas. India is aligning with Russia and Iran, as he calls this triangle of evil against America and Canada. And this is borne out by the facts. This is borne out as we regularly report about Putin's alignment with India and vice versa, Modi's alignment with Putin. We've seen what's been going on. We've provided the evidence regularly about that deep historic tie between Russia and India, and of course this improving relationship with China and Xi Jinping. So again, this alignment, this triangle of evil of China, Russia, India. So this is what Panoon is leveraging. He then goes on to say this tariff trade war is heading towards a third world war. Sikhs for Justice is going to work with Trump and Trudeau's administration. Obviously, recorded this before Trudeau's announcement. But this SFJ is going to work with Trump and Trudeau's administration to raise a Sikh brigade for the US and Canadian Army. This is interesting. He says, Sikhs for Justice is going to motivate and encourage Sikh youth to join the US and Canadian Army's Sikh brigade, as he calls it, to fight this triangle of evil led by India, Russia and Iran. While Sikhs for Justice is running a global Khalistan referendum campaign, which is a political campaign to liberate Punjab from Indian occupation. It's equally important now for the Sikh youth to join the US and Canadian armies, to learn military campaigning from the very best, as to how to uphold the democratic values, as how to fight the authoritarian regimes like Russia, Iran and India, who are occupying the indigenous lands of the Sikh community. The first 2025 Khalistan referendum voting dedicated to kill Modi's Hindutva ideology. Again, he deliberately uses this word kill. The referendum in 2025 will be held in Los Angeles, the hometown of Eric Garcetti, the US ambassador to India. Just like India's ally Russia, the Balkanization of India is on the card. So again, he's talking about the breakup of India. No Hindi, no Hindutva, no Hindustani, and then I can't work out what he actually says there. The sound again is too difficult to work out. But he talks about Khalistan. I asked Sikh youth in America and Canada to join the Sikh brigade in the US and Canadian armies to learn from the very best. Khalistan Zindabad. So again, this is a really, really significant message that he's put out. Aside from all the massive rhetoric and again his very clever methodology, kill India 25. Again, this very provocative rhetoric, where again he's deliberately pushing India's buttons. He's deliberately daring India to say, look, they're threatening us, they're threatening war, they're threatening to kill Indians. No, he's not. And again, he always tempers this with actually the real message. No. I'm saying this to gain your attention. What I'm really saying is, and there's two things. Firstly, we are going to launch a diplomatic war. We're going to join with our allies in the US and Canada, and we're going to launch this diplomatic war against India and your allies, Russia and China and Iran, etc. But the real interesting message here, he's now encouraging the youth, the young generation in the Sikh communities in the North America to join the US and Canadian armies, learn the craft of warfare, learn the trade of being a soldier, because your countries need you. And this is important, the message. Your countries, not being India, but not even Khalistan at this stage, your country is America. Your country is the US and Canada. Your loyalty is to your host nation. It is to Canada. It is to the US. Join their armies. Learn the craft of being a soldier. Learn the trade of being a soldier, because then you can use it one day in the future. If there is ever a war, as he implies here, if there is ever a war against totalitarian world of Russia, Iran, China, and by implication he implies India will join that axis, that triangle of evil as he calls it, then you will be equipped to fight for Khalistan when the time comes. So again, it's a very clever message, James, that is put here, and again it comes across in this sort of great dramatic blast, this provocative blast of rhetoric in his own inimitable and unique way, which is always quite fun to watch, and certainly it feeds the Indian Govt media machine with so much ammunition to attack him. But again, it's very deliberate, it's very clever. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's getting that attention in India because, of course, India, the whole of India, 1.4 billion people are glued to those who have television sets, are glued to their television sets looking at Panoon's rhetoric, going, oh my gosh, look at this guy, he's threatening to kill India. And Indian media, of course, are spinning this narrative, saying, look how evil this terrorist. But of course, those who have any ounce of intelligence can actually see through what he's actually saying. He said, no, he's not. He's not actually threatening to kill India or kill Indians. What he's actually doing, he's actually saying that India is joining this triangle of evil with Russia and Iran and China, etc. And it is the Sikh population who are actually fighting on behalf of their host nations, Canada and the free world, and the US and Europe and the free world. It is the Sikhs in the diaspora who are actually standing up for democracy, who are standing up for the whole concept of democracy. And whether you support Khalistan or not, what matters is that democracy prevails. And again, what he's pointing out here is that democracy is failing in India. And this is why he's saying that it is likely that there could be a third world war. He says, the trade war, this tariff trade war, is heading towards, in his words, a third world war. And he's saying that Sikhs for Justice will fight for democracy, for the democratic right of Sikhs for self-determination. But likewise, he encourages those within the community to join the armies of Western democracies to fight for democracy. And that's his real message, James. And I'll just finish off what I want to talk about. There were various comments that followed this across social media, and unsurprisingly, that Hindutva social media was filled with, "Oh, look what he's doing! Look what he's doing!" But it's clear to me his message is hitting home once again. These fiery messages that get spread across social media are hitting home. Of course, Hindutva jump on this and they mock him. They say, "Look how dangerous this guy is," and particularly what we talked about and what you talked about yesterday, James, about his Sikhs for Justice being banned for another 5 years. All he's doing is gaining more and more publicity so he can send out this message, this subliminal message. Beneath all this dramatic rhetoric is this subliminal message of democracy. He's appealing to the Sikh youth, is saying to the Sikh youth, fight for democracy, fight for Khalistan, and fight for your host nations, because that is what we stand for, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's face it, there have been Sikh brigades within various military regimes in Canada, in Britain, and around the world in the past. And they've always been feared because they are well trained, they are well self-determined, and they are definitely fearless. So they have a great reputation as being steadfast and feared soldier brigades. And so of course that is always welcome in the Canadian or U.S. military, that type of dedication. And when he talks about the World War, well, I don't know that this is going to be really the precipice to that. I think that even though Trump seems to be pissing off a lot of countries claiming the 51st state issue, my response to Trump is stay in your own lane. And hey, some of our politicians might be for sale, but our country's not.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's move on then as time marches on. Let's move on to, I said in the introduction, leaving politics and moving to the world of entertainment. But actually, this is where politics interferes in the world of entertainment. This is a story of Diljit Dosanjh. We've talked about Diljit Dosanjh on regular occasions. He is, of course, this Sikh musician and actor. And he has recently met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There's this sort of photo call, this very staged event where Narendra Modi met with Diljit Dosanjh at his residence. And during this conversation, Modi touched upon the Sikh community's contributions and paid tributes to what he said were the sacrifices of the sons of Guru Govt Singh, who left a lasting mark on Sikh history in their short but extraordinary lives. And I'm looking at an article here that came again from the Times of India. And of course, the Govt media was all over this story. It was a perfect photo call. It was a perfect PR opportunity for the Narendra Modi PR machine to say, look how down to earth Modi is. Look how down with the kids Modi is. Look how connected he is with the Sikh youth, because look, he's got Diljit Dosanjh in his office and they're having this great conversation. And in amongst this, Narendra Modi is pouring out how he feels for the Sikh community, how he pays tribute to Guru Govt Singh, the 10th Guru, and his sons and the Shaheeds who were martyred, etc., etc. And I'll just go through this article because it actually makes me cringe reading it, particularly in light and in the context of what James, you and I have learnt about what the Indian ruling elite have done to the Sikh community, certainly since 1947, and of course the history of the Sikh community even before then. And we hear now what Narendra Modi has to say. Let me just go through this article for you. He said, during their conversation, Modi praised Diljit's inspiring journey, remarking, "A son of India's village making the nation proud on the global stage is a great feeling. You are lucky your family named you Diljit, as it reflects how you continue to win hearts." Diljit, in turn, also praised Modi for his political journey and commitment to his nation. Modi, in turn, credited his success to divine grace. "Everything becomes possible with God's grace. In our country, we see God in everything, even in trees," Modi said. The conversation also touched upon the Sikh community's contributions to India, and Modi paid tribute to the sacrifices of the Sahibzadis, and they are the sons of Guru Govt Singh, and shared his experiences in Punjab, stating, "I have seen how people sleep on the floor after a mother's demise. I celebrate Veer Bal Diwas and want every child in this country to understand what strength and faith truly mean. Modi also recounted his efforts to restore a Gurdwara in Gujarat, where Guru Nanak Dev once stayed. He explained how the structure, destroyed in the 2001 earthquake, was rebuilt under his supervision before he became Gujarat's chief minister, and I'll come back to this in a moment. During the meeting, Diljit shared a heartfelt observation. "I recently watched one of your interviews, sir. For us, the Prime Minister holds a very significant position, and we often forget the human being behind the title." Modi in turn praised Diljit for remaining grounded despite achieving immense fame, noting his humility and dedication to his craft. Now, I absolutely cringed when I read this. And I cringed. I mean, there are so many pieces here that I want to talk about. We don't have time to even pick this apart. But let me, for example, let's talk about where Modi recounted his efforts to restore a Gurdwara in Gujarat. Now, I only need to talk about how many mosques have been torn down, and the recent mosque that was torn down and replaced with the Hindu temple that caused so much upset in the Islamic population. And he talks about 2001 earthquake that damaged this Gurdwara in Gujarat, and he talks about how he rebuilt it. Well, certainly this is a complete hypocrisy. Bear in mind that around that time, that's when Narendra Modi earned the moniker of the Butcher of Gujarat because of the 2,000 Muslims who were massacred after riots under his watch in Gujarat. So, and it just goes on. And he talks about the martyrdom of the sons of the 10th Guru. And actually, he talks about the Sahib Zadi, and I had to look this up to understand fully what this meant. And this refers back to events that took place in 1704. Again, we don't have time to go into the details of it. But basically, it was the four sons, the four Sahib Zads, the sons of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who were martyred at the Battle of Chamkaur at the hands of the Mughals. But again, this sits absolutely uncomfortably where he's trying to pay tribute to these martyrs, when in fact his persecution of the Sikh community since 2014 when he took power, and he's trying again to pay tribute to the Sikhs and the Sikh community after everything that he's done, not just against the Sikh community, but of course all minority communities, whether it's the Muslims, the Christians or the Jains across India, that he's sitting there with Diljit Dosanjh just pouring out, saying, oh, how much I feel for the Sikh community and how much I admire everything they stand for and how much I admire the Shaheeds, etc., etc. And again, I only need to use that term Shaheed when we talk about Najjar and the many Shaheeds that have been martyred in 1984, the Sikh genocides, etc., etc. Again, the hypocrisy absolutely oozes out of every pore of Modi's body in this. And what also sits very uncomfortably, and I'm very interested in our audience's opinion of this, is Diljit Dosanjh himself, a successful Sikh singer and actor. Now, is Diljit Dosanjh a Khalistani? I don't know. This is very interesting. I've tried to research what his stance is on the situation, the philosophy of Khalistan, and it's very difficult to find out. He's, I think, been very deliberately clever. He's not made it too clear where he stands on this. I would say, on balance, he is anti-Khalistan because, well, firstly, the evidence is his cozying up to Narendra Modi in itself I find really distasteful on behalf of the Sikh community and certainly the Khalistan community. I find it very uncomfortable, I find it very distasteful that he's cozying up to the man who has been so instrumental in clearly into the murder of many in the Khalistan community particularly, but also a man who has been persecuting the community so fervently since he took power in 2014. And I think a Sikh to sit there, and if you watch the interview, to be so sycophantic to this Prime Minister, I find actually really quite distasteful. But that is my personal opinion. But I'm very interested in our community's opinion, in the audience. What is your opinion of Diljit Dosanjh? How do you feel about him? Do you think he's a complete sellout to the Sikh community, or do you think he actually has a right, and of course he has a democratic right to be anti-Khalistan? That is absolutely his privilege and his prerogative if he doesn't believe in Khalistan, as indeed many of our viewers don't necessarily believe in Khalistan, but of course many of our viewers do. But what I find particularly distasteful, I think almost the Khalistan issue is irrelevant here. I think as a Sikh, coming from the Sikh community, he sits there wearing his turban and he sycophants up to Narendra Modi, praising Modi for everything that he's done for the community. How do you feel about that in our audience? Do you feel as uncomfortable as I do? Or do you find, yeah, no, he's every right, and I respect Diljit Dosanjh? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you think about it. But I certainly find, as I say, I find the whole PR thing really distasteful in the context of everything we talked about. And many comments followed this article, and I just want to pick out particularly one. And again, I think he's obviously clearly a Hindutva supporter, but this typifies many comments that followed. And this commenter said, these artists are most probably blackmailed into supporting the Khalistani agenda. So actually, this comment didn't follow this article. This comment came when I researched. I was trying to find out if Dosanjh is a supporter of Khalistan. And again, I find it very difficult to find a definitive answer. But one of the comments that came up in my research was this one. It was on Reddit. And this is an interesting insight into how many of the Hindutva side feel about the Sikh community. These artists are most probably blackmailed into supporting the Khalistani agenda, or else they face death threats to them and their family from the drug cartels in Punjab, which have links with ISI, the Pakistan Intelligence Services. These drug cartels have the police, judiciary and all political parties on their payroll. Yes, even the BJP, Akali Dal, Congress, the AAP, everyone. And also similar threats are given to Punjabis who have migrated to countries like Canada, and because everyone knows Punjab police and the judiciary are as incompetent as that of Bihar, they care for their families. And he goes on about this, and then he also says, it talks about the Tamils, where was this? Oh yes, he said, you will also find LTTE presence targeting Tamilians in the same way. A topic for another day. And again, he's implying that this same pressure is on, in particularly Tamil Nadu, another area, another region of India that is threatened to break away and become independent. So what this person actually believes, and this is an irony which I find really quite funny in another context, is that he's actually saying is that it's the Khalistan movement that are blackmailing people like Diljit Dosanjh, threatening them, saying, look, unless you join the Khalistan movement, we will threaten you and your families, etc. You must support the Khalistan movement. And he's actually saying, even in the diaspora, that Khalistanis are threatening Sikhs with violence and their families with violence, and even back in the Punjab, if you don't join the Khalistan cause. And wow, if this is really what the Hindutva people believe, this is quite shocking because, well, I only need to show you pictures of the Khalistan referendum and the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that turned out in the diaspora to support that. I don't see any threats of violence or whatever there. I think it's fair to say, James, that the people who are out there in those protests and carrying Khalistan flags are not there under duress. They are not there under threats of violence. They're clearly there because they believe in the cause. And likewise in the Punjab, it is those who support Khalistan who are too afraid to stand up. But ironically, the threats of violence are coming from the BJP, from Hindutva. We report on it on a daily basis. The threats of violence are coming from Hindutva against those who dare speak out. So I think this is typical of what many Hindu people believe, is that the Khalistan movement is, again, likewise, funded by ISI, that it's funded by the drug cartels of the Punjab. Again, it's this smear. They're always trying to smear the Khalistan movement, saying it's linked to drugs, it's linked to Pakistan intelligence, when the truth is really absolutely the opposite. And I find it quite shocking that this is perpetuated by the Hindutva social media army. They perpetuate this nonsense that they're trying to smear the movement with links to drugs. Again, we talked about it yesterday when that assassination happened in California, and again they tried to link it. They link the Sikh to the drug movements. Absolute nonsense again, or linking it to Pakistan intelligence. We see this regularly. It's a regular tactic of Hindutva, and it's absolute nonsense. So there you go, James. I'm very curious to know what our audience's thoughts are on Diljit Dosanjh and other artists, Punjabi artists like them. Yes, they're trying to promote their careers by cozying up to prime ministers. Who wouldn't if they're trying to promote their musical careers? But in the context of what we talk about and the persecution of the Sikh community, I actually find it quite distasteful, James.
Yeah, I agree with you, Angus. And, the question is behind the scenes. First of all, I mean, here in Canada or in the US, if an artist who has an international recognition was invited to the White House or to Parliament Hill, I mean, how do they handle it? Do they disrespect the leader and possibly suffer the ramifications in their professional world? Or do they stand up with their dignity and their ethics and say, nope, sorry, I'll pass on this meeting? It's a tough call to make. And what his motivations were is something that, of course, we don't know either. So, again, it's all about respecting the people's right to make their own choices. However, given the track history of Modi, I do find it disturbing. But at the same time, I don't know what his motivations are there. So.
Yeah, who knows? We could talk for hours about it, but yeah. I mean, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, what your opinions are of Diljit Dosanjh and particularly this meeting with Narendra Modi. Okay, James, we're only out of time. Let's move on quickly to our comments columns. Loads of comments to report on today. We'll start off with Curios, who says, fantastic news, what a pivotal move for democracy and human rights. Yes, of course, this follows the announcement of Trent Franks joining the Khalistan Caucus Foundation. Right. Loads and loads of very supportive comments, loads of people within the community really delighted about this news. Curios, obviously one of them, one of many. And you say that the globe certainly needs to hear about the importance of Khalistan and what it would bring for a region which is becoming more and more aligned to autocratic governance. Absolutely right. And again, we've talked a lot about how India is sinking towards what you call autocratic governance. And the more congressmen and congresswomen that join the cause, and not just in the US, but of course across the Western democratic world, the more that movement will gain momentum. And that is what we're seeing. But now these are a couple of interesting comments. Came from Toxic Griefer and Cesium Iron. As a Sikh Khalistan, we've often talked about the map of Khalistan and what form Khalistan should actually take in terms of its geographical boundary. Well, Toxic Griefer says it must include Pakistan Punjab. Now, many people have said that in the past. NF region, Haryana, Himachal, not this made-up map. And of course, you're referring to that map in the thumbnail. And Cesium Iron also says, look, you displayed the correct map of Khalistan. If Uttarakhand can be included, that would benefit us. Great. Must also take our land occupied by China and Pakistan. So I think what these two comments really, conclude, and I think really point to the fact is that at this stage, we don't really know what the boundaries of Khalistan would take. And in reality, I think when we get to that stage, when people, the relevant stakeholders are sitting around that negotiating table, which will happen hopefully in the foreseeable future, is that they will be thrashed out over a negotiating table with probably Pakistan and India. What are the boundaries of modern-day Khalistan? In the old days, in the days of the Sikh Empire, it was enormous. It did cover all the way up to the border of China and well in towards the border of Afghanistan. And indeed, in fact, even down to Delhi itself. But the question of what modern-day Khalistan will take, we don't know. And I think we could argue for hours amongst ourselves what it should and what it should take. And of course, we all know it should include all these sorts of areas that you refer to. But in practical modern-day politics, it is likely it will be much smaller than it used to be. But as long as it is its own sovereign independent state, and that is what it will be. That's what really matters at this stage. If it wants to expand in the future, that will be for a later stage. But yeah, I think we can all speculate, James, about what the borders of Khalistan should and could be.
And that's something that we talked about a lot. I mean, you can only have one battle at a time, and you've got to take into account what happened in 1947, the way the Sikhs were deceived and shut out there. So I think that's the most prevalent and important aspect of Khalistan, and that's why the focus is for the Punjab region the way it is now.
Indeed, and the next comment from R. Joanda actually goes back to partition in 1947, when, of course, that was the formative time when modern-day Punjab, it's not even modern day, it's been split twice since, but certainly the Punjab was divided into two and became the Indian and Pakistan side of Punjab. And you say that Haryana and Himachal would also have been part of the Khalsa and today Punjab has been reduced to three parts. Indeed, it's been split twice since 1947, and of course that oppression continues. But here's an interesting comment. I love this comment. Akira makes a very philosophical statement saying, look, things happen for a good reason. Don't live in the past. The past is a medicine. if we learn from our mistakes and we do not make a similar mistake in the future. I think this actually really sums up this whole page of comments. Look, let's forget the past. Let's learn from it. Let's learn the lessons, but let's look at the future. What matters is what happens next. And I think that, James, is the critical comment of all this. And I think this sends a lesson to all of us. Look, we've learned from the past. Let's move forward. Let's look at only what happens next. Let's focus on the next steps.
And that's a wise words of advice for all of us.
I think that really is a wonderful lesson. Thank you for that comment. Right, ASB says, look, Trent Franks, let Trent fix issues of African Americans in the US. What's he done for them? And this did actually provoke a bit of a thread of comments, and there were a few comments in between, and ASB came back and says, no, I know exactly what I'm saying. If Punjabis want to fight for Khalistan, why move to the US? And Humanity comes back, and actually this is a great comment. Look, okay, when India was fighting for its independence, what was Gandhi doing outside of India before 1947? Absolutely right. Gandhi was actually out in South Africa and all travelling all over the place, fighting for India's independence. So you can't use that argument saying, why are all Punjabis out in North America and Europe, etc., and Australia and New Zealand? Why are they fighting for independence out there? Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're in India. And the reality is, if you fought for independence in India, you end up in jail, like Amritpal Singh, like many others who've been fighting for independence in the Punjab. That's what happened. And the first comment here, James, where it says, what Trent Franks has been fighting about African Americans in the US, what's he done for them? Well, actually, Trent has done an enormous amount for anybody persecuted in the US. If you just look at his CV, you look at his list of achievements, African Americans wasn't actually high on his list of priorities because he was actually fighting for many other things. He couldn't fight for everything, but what he did achieve was absolutely enormous, and he did actually fight for minorities and religious minorities' rights. You just look at what he achieved in the US, and I think you'll answer your own question there. I suggest you do your own bit of research if you don't believe me. So, James, I'm going to quickly move on now as we are running out of time. And I'm delighted to say that Critics Corner has found fertile ground. We have a good list of critical comments at last to report on. So, and this kicks off. I'll let Tigers kick off with our Critics Corner for today. Stop this propaganda. Stop pretending you guys care. You guys and the Brits before you just use Sikhs as cannon fodder for their wars. Sikhs want a strong and united India. Can you give that to us? Well, where to begin on this comment? Thank you, Tigers, for this comment. It's no, we're not going to stop this propaganda. We exist to spread the truth. And stop pretending you guys care. We're not pretending. We don't do this for fun. We're doing it because we do care. If you don't believe us, why would we be here ranting on day after day? Now, using Sikhs for cannon fodder. Yeah, this is a very poignant point, and I do absolutely sympathise with this. Anybody in the army who fights for globalist or whatever wars, they are cannon fodder. We are all against war. None of us want to go to war. 99% of people on this planet do not want to go to war. Wars are started by the 1%. They fight the wars between themselves, the 1%. They use the 99% of us as the cannon fodder. And there's that great statement, suppose they gave a war and nobody came. If only that would happen. Naive, obviously, and ideological. But yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I'm with you on this. It's not just Sikhs who use cannon fodder. All of us are using cannon fodder. I would particularly refer to the 1914-18 conflict in which tens of millions died in the carnage in the trenches. They were the cannon fodder, and it absolutely disgusts and appalls me that 1% in the human population create these dreadful situations where people like you and I are used as cannon fodder, and our forefathers were used as cannon fodder, and they leave their blood and entrails in the killing fields across the world. It's absolutely appalling. So I'm with you on that one. But then when you say Sikhs want a strong united India, can you give that to us? Well, actually, ironically, we did. In 1947, the Brits gave you a strong and united India. We handed it to your colonial rulers, the Brahmins. I rest my case, James.
And where are we now, right? And so I mean, obviously, they've got to go back and look at some of the history and educate a bit more. But you speak the truth when you say that we are here because we care. We feel that there's a strong need to stand up for the Sikh community and their right to express their opinions and to have the Khalistan referendum. And when you say war that nobody showed up for, maybe that's a new lyric that, Diljit Dosanjh can write a song about.
Indeed. And Vinnie Chorn made a couple of comments, again attacking Trent. Who is this Trent? He couldn't help his own countrymen. I refer you to my previous comments when actually he's done an awful lot for his own countrymen. And then he's made this interesting comment. Tried terrorism, but failed, so trying diplomacy. Now, I sort of half agree with this actually, but it wasn't terrorism. It was militancy. It was self-defense militancy. What happened in the Punjab in the 1980s and 1990s wasn't terrorism, and it hasn't been terrorism ever since. It started off as militancy because there was an onslaught, there was a genocide against the Sikh community in the Punjab in the 1980s and 90s. They had no choice but to take up arms, to try and defend themselves, to try and stop the young being dragged out into the countryside by the police and murdered in cold blood. So what would you do in that situation? They had no choice but to pick up arms. But yeah, it failed because they were defeated by an enormous state machine. So yeah, they're trying diplomacy. Absolutely right. And thank you for acknowledging the fact that now that the Khalistan movement is trying democratic process, the rule of law and diplomacy. In that, Vinnie Chorn, you're absolutely right. And I absolutely confirm your comment on that one, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, let's face it, what parent wouldn't stand up to protect their children and their children's future?
Indeed. And Franziwell, one of our regular critics. Franziwell, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for your comment. The propaganda on this channel is strong. I'm going to take that as a compliment, James.
And thank you for that.
Indeed, and long may it remain strong and effective. Thank you, Franziwell, for your continued critical comments. And Sandy Monroe responds actually with really the correct response to this is, look, there are 125,000 Govt media channels versus one Sikh channel. So, and I don't know what that Punjabi means afterwards. I hope it's not too rude. But basically, yes, in reality, look, we're just one small voice against the enormous propaganda machine of the Indian government that is feeding the overall majority of the Indian population. So don't fear us, just listen to us, listen to what we're saying. We're offering you an alternative point of view, which in fact is probably the truth as opposed to the Govt media. And then this interesting comment from Rajib Joshi says, you people intent on stealing land. This is interesting. Careful, you may lose the one you have. Well, firstly, I would say we're not trying to steal land. The whole Khalistan movement isn't about stealing land. It's about reclaiming land. India, unfortunately, again, there was no land stolen. The only people who stole land was the British. It was the British who stole that whole subcontinent, created India, modern day India, under the British Empire, but then handed it to the Brahmins. What we're trying to do is quite the opposite. We're trying to break up it back into the people who actually own that land. India doesn't own India in reality. It's the people of India own the land. And if those people democratically decide that they individually as a region want to own their region, that is their democratic right. That is what the Khalistan movement is about. It is not about stealing anybody's land. It's not about stealing India's land. It's about reclaiming their own land under their democratic right to secede. So, unfortunately, I don't necessarily agree with your comment, Rajib Joshi. But this interesting one. Careful, you may lose the one you have. That's an interesting, curious comment, James. I don't know how to even interpret that one.
Well, I'm in Canada, so we stole this land from the First Nations and the Indigenous. So, as we hand it back to them, we're already losing the ones that we have because we're giving it back to the rightful owners at that point. So.
Yeah, again, that's a whole topic we could talk for hours about.
Exactly.
I think in the interest of time, let's move on. Okay, final set of comments. Affordability for you says, look, looks like India will be divided soon. Yeah, absolutely. We talk about this often, James. I think the momentum is gathering, and I think all these regions are getting a sniff of potential independence, potential self-determination. Of course, the Khalistan movement is at the forefront of that, and I think the momentum is gathering. The weight is behind the Khalistan movement. Of course, more and more politicians in the Western world are joining to stand with the whole movement. I think, who knows, James, we could see the breakup of India in the foreseeable future.
That's very true, and something that we talk about quite often, Angus.
And 5AAB65, thank you for this comment. You say, look, Please spell khalistan with an A, not an I. If you check the pronounced word, it will sound khalas, not khalis. When we say khalsa, it's A, not khalisa. Thank you for all that you're doing for the Sikhs. A pleasure. And may Waraguru keep you all in Chadikala. And the same to you. Thank you for your comment. Now, I don't know the answer to this, James. This is, again, we come back to Sikh or Sikhs or Punjab or Punjab. And now it's Khalistan or Khalistan. Ooh, I don't know, James. I'm going to have to seek higher authority on this. I'm, again, interested in our wider audience's opinion. Is it Khalistan? I've always spelt it Khalistan. Or is it Khalastan? Now, the thumbnail that says Khalistan, I didn't put that Khalistan thumbnail together. I will have to ask those in our editing department who put that together. Why did you put Khalistan? Is it Khalistan? James, I don't know. I'm lost on this one.
I don't know, buddy. I really have no idea. That's something that I think we'll refer to our audience and ask for some advice on that.
Indeed. So please let us know. Thank you, 5AAB, for your input on that. Does anybody else have any opinion on that? Should it be Khalistan or should it be Khalistan? I don't know. What matters is it happens, and hopefully it will happen, or not hopefully, it will happen in the foreseeable future. But let us know your thoughts on that one. And the final comment comes from Spirit of Khalsa, talking about Khalsa. Merry Christmas, belatedly so, to Angus and James, and the same to you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Satellite team, for amazing analysis and coverage in 2024. It was a pleasure. And again, I'll just reiterate mine and James's thanks to each and every one of you for all your support in 2024, for making us the channel that we are. I think we're up to about 22,000 subscribers now. So thank you so much for that. Of course, we are demonetized, which is a great shame. But of course, you can contribute. If you click in the description below, you'll find links to where you can contribute and donate to the channel. Much appreciated if you can do, because we do try and keep this channel going financially. It's a struggle, but we are doing our best. So thank you for all those. Thank you for all your support. And you say, may God, Guru, bless the Sikh people, more autonomy and freedom. Absolutely. The international community support the Sikhs to regain the lost glory and provide stability and peace in South Asia. I couldn't have put it better myself, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And yeah, we went up about 100 viewers or 100 subscribers today. So again, if people support the channel and share the word, spread the word, let others know about us, because that definitely helps as well.
Indeed. So thank you, Spirit of Khalsa. What a wonderful, wonderful name that, and I think that sums up everything about that we all hope to stand for, the Spirit of Khalsa. So thank you very much indeed for your comments. Thank you to each and every one of you who have commented. Please do keep those comments coming in. Of course, that is the end of another Perspectives for today. But of course, don't forget you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's anything you'd like to let us know about that you don't want to put in the public domain. But do keep those comments coming. They are very much appreciated. Thank you for all the supportive comments, and thank you for all the corrective comments that come in. And do let us know your opinions on many of the topics that we've covered today. But in the meantime, we must draw things to a close for another day. Thank you so much for watching once again. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe.
Have a great day. You've been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.